let me explain the situation I'm in right now. I'm trapped in the New Mexican desert, and there is nothing to be seen around me but my phone's notepad app, which I'm writing this on, and the endless sea of sand and cacti. We had driven for 2 days. We had driven from South Carolina to an area just a few dozen miles away from the border with Arizona. We were in Navajo Nation at the time, and might still be. We had gone around Oklahoma to avoid most of the construction sites, but only ended up in 3-hour-long traffic in Dallas and the surrounding cities. Of course, we would be almost 3 to 4 days late for the meetup we were supposed to have. We were always late. There's no stereotype that's more accurate for Dad's side of the family, him and I being the only ones left on his side of the family, than being late by a painfully long time. I really shouldn't go off on tangents here. I'm not sure what could attack me out here before I finish, or if I will die of starvation before that happens. The car came to a sudden stop with me banging my head on the lining Dad put on the window to cover cracks in the glass, and dropping my phone under the seat. I made the universal annoyed grunting noise that everyone makes when they are mad. Like every other time Dad would stop the car like this, was overreacting just by the slightest bit. I picked up my phone and looked at Dad, who could clearly see me in the mirror. "What am I waiting for? You to tell me to stop?" he said, chuckling a bit before refocusing on what was ahead of us. "No, don't. It would be property damage and trespassing," I tried to say, just now noticing the huge gate in front of us with chains and all reading, "Stop, do not go past this point." But Dad, being the huge idiot he is, ignored me and slammed the gas pedal down. The car skidded on the sand and hardened dirt, lurching forward, and ramming into the gate, breaking the sign and chain, causing a lot of damage to the lights and general front of the car. A loud noise startled me, and I, like the car, lurched forwards with what I over-exaggerated to be an ear-destroying noise. I was very sensitive to sound, and Dad knew that. Knowing him, he probably did it just to annoy me. I yelled at Dad for not letting me prepare for the loud noise, him calling me a big baby, and telling me to toughen up. I knew I should. The noise wasn't that loud. Not nearly loud enough to cause hearing loss. We continued down the road for a few miles, me losing the little reception I already had, and getting off my phone to save my battery. The only things I had to do now were reading, which I hated, and I would rather die than read, or stare at the endless sea of sand and cacti. I chose the cacti staring. I stared at the cacti and sand, which was very boring, but not as boring as staring at a dead tree that was supposed to bring joy. I could see the occasional bird or snake, maybe a scorpion here or there. Not much stuff to focus on. And then, the car broke down. "Well, what are we supposed to do now?" Dad asked rhetorically, probably coming up with some stupid idea that would get him upset when it didn't work. I didn't respond. Either way, he was going to do something I wouldn't like, so there was no reason for me to try and stop him. He got out of the car and messed with the engine. He said a bunch of things he thought only he could hear, cussing about how he didn't have the parts that sounded like some high rapper thought of in their dreams, which he so desperately needed to fix this world-destroying issue. And now he had no reception, and the nearest police station was over 70 miles away. Neither of us said anything for a long time. I mean, a really long time. It was night before we said anything. "What the actual hell is that?" He kind of scream-whispered at me, pointing in the direction of what I assume was a limping werewolf. That better not be a skinwalker. He could barely even get out the words before the creature looked at Dad, and the life drained from his eyes. The only thing I could do was sit there, shaking him, yelling, "Dad, Dad, wake up!" like some kid trying to wake their dad up for some stupid thing. I looked over at the creature, which in a split second between me blinking, went from 50 yards away to 30 right in front of the car. I blacked out looking into the creature's cold, murderous eyes. Its fur looked like fuzzy skin was draped over a 7'1" person with a broken leg. I woke up without anything but my phone and an endless desert in front of me. I didn't know what to do, but I saw a speck on top of a mountain in the distance, which might be a house or a really big rock. But either way, it was something, so I started walking towards it. I walked for days. I lost count after the hunger was the only driving force getting me to move. My thought process was a mix of a few things, them being, I'm so hungry, and maybe that is a house and they'll have food, so maybe I should walk faster. But one problem, walking faster made me hungrier, which made me walk faster. And that would repeat until I blacked out a few times, and the mountain somehow moved further away. It's been about 8 days now, and I only have one thought in my head: eat any living thing you see. The hunger is driving me insane. There's a rock near me. I know what I should do. I'll go bash my head in until I can't think about the hunger anymore. All I can think about is the pain and rushing red blood pouring through the hole in my head. This is going to be the last entry in this notepad app, but whoever finds this, if anyone ever finds this, do not trespass, especially in the Navajo Nation. Nothing good will come out of it. So I'm one of the police officers that were chosen to research what happened to the guy. I was the person who found the phone, covered in blood and turned off. I had to bring it to one of my friends at their business to get it repaired, and of course, I read this guy's story. I slightly believe him, and slightly is a lot compared to the rest of my team. I was the one that was going to stay longer than the rest of the team and do the investigation after it is entirely closed off. I eventually came to the realization that I have no idea what to do, so I just labeled it as murder and suicide, although I didn't believe that was the only thing to it. Of course, me being the only one still interested in the case after they stopped the investigation, I continued to go to the site and try and figure out clues that I knew wouldn't present themselves. I had been there for a few days already and wanted to see if I could find this werewolf creature. I did my research on the creatures, which now I know not to say, which I am trying my best not to. I also know not to look at it for long and just hide when I see it, but I was still interested and would probably look at it anyway. It was turning night already. I think I took a nap around 3 p.m., but I didn't notice I fell asleep until like 10 p.m. I looked in all directions around me. It was kind of funny because I looked like I was high. That may just be how I usually look, though. On my first week, the other police officers tried to drug test me because my eyes were always bloodshot and I acted like an idiot. I noticed what the last guy noticed. The cacti. I don't know how I managed to miss the cacti, seeing as it was everywhere around me. I guess I just never took note of me being in the desert. I drove around a few minutes later. There was no werewolf. Pretty disappointing if I'm being honest, but it's not like I wanted to die. I just wanted to get a picture or at least look at it, but with it at least a mile away. My plan was to drive back at around 1 a.m., so I would have to get a lot of energy drinks. I could never seem to fall asleep, but just the moment I try to fall asleep, I go into hibernation. Like the dead guy, I shouldn't go on rants. I don't want to miss anything. Finally, I see it. It does look like fuzzy skin was thrown on it, and it does have yellow death glaring eyes. I don't think I've ever gotten this much of an adrenaline high, but I was terrified. It looked at me. Those eyes were the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. I'm using past tense because I've seen something worse. Something far worse. I'm writing this days from that. Maybe even weeks. Let me explain what has happened since then. I also blacked out with it just in front of my car. I also woke up in the desert. Although I did wake up in a desert, I woke up in an abandoned village. I searched it for a while. The only thing I could find was destroyed homes and spider webs. I went out of the village and started walking towards what I thought was the mountain that I thought the guy was talking about. I was pretty sure it was the right one because I could also see the speck on top of it. I walked for days, weeks even. The hunger kept getting worse, but I kept on walking. I used rocks to poke myself periodically to get distracted with a new type of pain. It hurt a lot, but not nearly as much as the hunger pain. But I didn't care about that. The only thing I cared about at the moment was getting to that mountain. It took days, but I got to the base of the mountain. It was like a little island made of rocks was dropped into the desert because it didn't have a way up but climbing. So I grabbed onto some rocks and started climbing up. I moved slowly, a bit from the pain and a bit from terror. Some of the rocks just moved out from beneath my feet and hands, so I had to quickly jump over to the other side. It took me 30 minutes that I counted. But that was only the beginning. It definitely took me like an hour of grunting and pulling to get myself up that terrible wall of rocks. At the top of the mountain was a symbol made of sticks and a skull, with words written in red paint, which I assumed to be blood. I couldn't understand the words. They were definitely in a native language. There were objects and symbols in a circle around the assembling of sticks and skulls. I could see the clouds finally. They were gray and a sort of reddish tint to them. I could see the skinwalker now. It was very tall, taller than I thought it would be, at least 10 feet, with the eyes being like little red dots in the face. I knew what I needed to do. I must destroy the ritual area. I walked further onto the mountain and entered the circle. It did the same. I kicked the objects around and it faded a bit and reached out for me. I dodged and knocked them all off, which enraged it. I grabbed a stick with a skull on it, and it grabbed my hand, which started turning a very dark shade of black, which started to spread up my body. I started shaking it, which put the now infected part of my body in terrible, indescribable amounts of pain. The creature screeched and faded more. It started to turn into ash and faded into the sky, going with the wind. I broke the ritual area entirely, and it faded into the sky. It disappearing made me black out and wake up in my car. My hand bruised, but me still being alive. I'm so thankful that I was able to break that thing. Now no one else will have to go through this nightmare. The only thing I need to say here is don't trespass. And do not go into the Navajo Nation unless completely mandatory. I'm never doing this again.